Hello all, welcome to the Consistently OK podcast, a podcast where we dive into all things pop culture related from comics to films and everything in between. My name's Luke.
I'm Nick.
Join us every week for a podcast that doesn't set its bar too high or too low, but rather keeps it at a consistently OK level for your enjoyment.
Hey, Ian McShane in the background staring a hole through me again.
There he is. I don't know how to get rid of him. I have no idea. I'd put him on somehow and he's now permanent.
Hello everyone, and this is our Christmas podcast. I hope you're all enjoying your festive breaks. And today we're going to talk about Star Wars again. This is our second volume of Star Wars. It's going to focus on the Disney Star Wars, I guess we can say, which is the newer trilogy, the Skywalker Saga. Is that what it's called? I think it's called the Skywalker Saga. Or is it all called the Skywalker? Yeah, I think it's called the Skywalker Saga.
Yeah,
I think everything from like the prequels up to now is Skywalker Saga, right?
Yeah,
is it?
Right?
Does it contain? Oh no. Well, we'll call this the Disney Skywalker Saga.
Yeah.
If it's just Disney, then yeah, that's the newest three, right?
Yeah. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Plus, we'll also talk about Solo, and we'll talk about Rogue One, and we'll talk about Mandalorian, which is obviously very recent in everyone's minds, and also the future of Star Wars as well. What's coming up? What we're all looking forward to. We're joined today by a special guest. He was the one who joined us on the Into the Snyderverse podcast. It's Harry Hughes. Hello, Harry.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Resplendent. Thank you. Excellent.
Gosh,
Splendid.
Happy to be here.
That is
I'd just like to bring a new one in each time. You know, I do think you need to raise the bar on your guests. This should have been Matthew McConaughey, or Dwayne Johnson, or Halle Berry, someone like that. But you've settled for me again, which is humbling.
You really went downhill.
Yeah, I was going to say, Halle Berry,
and then you jumped up to The Rock, and then you just went down to Halle Berry.
Down to Halle Berry? What?
You can't go from The Rock to Halle Berry.
Well, I did.
You did. I mean, he went there. There's no going back.
The Rock ripped his front gate off to get to work. Halle Berry hasn't done a film in forever.
She was in John Wick.
Oh, she was in John Wick. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it was great. I'm sticking up for Halle Berry here.
God. He's dropping
Halle, if you're listening,
in big words, and he's showing his film knowledge off. Nick,
suddenly become Halle Berry's agent.
Yeah.
Oh please! Actually, no. I wouldn't be her agent for any good reasons. No.
Just make it clear to anyone listening is anyone out there? To the listeners, that Harry is currently sitting in front of a Grand Canyon background on his side of the chat, which looks sensational. It's
if everyone could see it, wouldn't it be wonderful? But
it would be wonderful.
They'll just have to imagine it.
All right then, guys. So Star Wars. We spoke about the original trilogy. Nick and I did 2 weeks back.
Yep.
I basically said my piece that I didn't grow up with Star Wars necessarily, but I sort of found my way into it. Nick, his family, big fans. And Harry, just quickly, we'll touch about it very briefly, but original trilogy, fan, not a fan? You're a huge Star Wars fan? Can't stand it? Bad reason to have you on here?
Fan of all. I'm one of those weird people who I was brought up with the original trilogy, obviously, good parenting. And then, I saw the prequels and I took a lot from that I enjoyed, and I've seen the sequels and all the spin-offs. And I'm just a general Star Wars fan. I like the universe, so I have favourite films, but I think they all play a part in the greater story. So yeah,
you're not like a diehard fan, are you? You're not. So for me, I go to them and I enjoy them, but I don't. It's not a lot that I write home about. I'm just wow, that was really good, and then I could meet a Star Wars fan. They're no, that was terrible. I'm I just thought it was okay.
There's certain things about some of the films I feel very strongly about what I think makes Star Wars, but I'm not going to go to conventions and punch people for dressing up as Jar Jar, or worship people dressing as Darth Vader. I feel Star Wars is just meant to be enjoyed, and so long as as long as you enjoy it, you're cool by me.
Basically, what we were trying to find out is if you're a massive fan, as this is our Christmas show, whether you're a massive fan of the holiday special. That's what we were...
Special.
The
holiday special, yes, I'm a massive fan of the holiday special. It's terrible but amazing. Yeah,
Amazingly
it's that
terrible.
it's that level of animation that I really enjoy. Like do you know when there's so many imperfections in something, but it actually improves it? I remember there's a distinct part. Not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. Just go watch it. But there's like a sideways shot of Boba Fett, Chewbacca, and I think it's the two droids as they like walk onto the Millennium Falcon, like kind of later into it. And yeah, the animation of them walking is amazing. It's that like Scooby-Doo, like slinky arm walk thing going on. And yeah, I love it for all the right reasons. And massively respect the fact that apparently all the actual actors did the voices of their own characters, which is weird because you hear Harrison Ford animating like a caricature version of himself, which you would assume he'd just be like, no, I'm not doing that. But
considering he didn't want to do these new, well, I read a lot of stuff. I feel like some of it isn't true, but he wasn't a big fan of doing the new trilogy originally. I don't think
he wanted to die a long time. Not in like he wanted to kill off
his
Han Solo, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think we actually said that last time, didn't we, Nick?
Yeah, I think he. I think when he got to Empire, he always saw the trajectory for his character as to die, and so he didn't want to do Return. But I guess he kind of saw Force Awakens as a chance to complete what he wanted to do.
Nice. Yeah. So Mickey Mouse, he came along, and he brought Star Wars and everything that it offers, and they decided we're going to make a new trilogy with a lot of new characters, and the first one of those was The Force Awakens, which came out in, God, it feels like a long time ago now. It must be 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
Was it 20? I think it was 2015.
5 years? Oh, really? 5 years.
Trivia.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say 5 years. And
estimated 5 years.
Should we just talk about what we think about that new trilogy, the Disney trilogy? There's a lot more other stuff we want to talk about as well, but what are your overall thoughts on it, on the characters and the films themselves? Do you have a favourite out of the three? Let's start with Nick.
Hello. So general thought. Hello. It was 2015. I was just double checking that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I feel like you weren't going to sleep if you didn't figure that out, were you?
Yeah,
like
I got to do that. I got to do these.
Nice.
Yeah. Overall thoughts on the trilogy. I think because I watched them back within the last week, and there's things that I absolutely love about it, and then there's things that I don't. And I think a lot of what I don't like is more their process of making them. In that, I think they approached it with the idea of doing 3 different directors to try and hark back to the original trilogy. And I think they forgot that the original trilogy was based off of an outline by one person. And so going into this trilogy, they had 3 different writers. And I know that when JJ did Force Awakens, he wrote an outline for where he sees the other 2 going. And you get to the second film, Last Jedi, and that was sort of just written in its own bubble. It was written in isolation, and it's sort of, I don't need to know what came before necessarily. I don't need to know what comes after. It's just, I'm going to write this as it is. And I think the trilogy suffers from that problem in that I think Force Awakens is a great start. It's just a fun Star Wars adventure, even though it harkens back to A New Hope a lot. I think what it does is it introduces all these new characters, and there's enough difference from A New Hope for me in the sense that Rey's journey and Rey's character is very different to what you get with Luke in A New Hope. Like I struggle to see the parallels other than there's somebody that lives on a desert planet. They're completely different. And I think it sets up all these characters to go on this big journey, which is again the opposite of A New Hope. By the end of A New Hope, that film could just end there. You don't need what's next because there's nothing, they don't set anything up. Whereas Force Awakens, there's so many threads that are set up. And so by the time you get to Last Jedi, I always feel like it just dips because it isn't really carrying through any of those threads. It's sort of, is what it is. And then Rise, I've got a real soft spot for because it sort of gives me that magic of Star Wars back, but at the same time has to end a 9 saga film run, which has gone on since 77. And it has to sort of rectify what people didn't like about Last Jedi, as well as honor what people did like about Last Jedi, and finish off just a normal trilogy. So there's a lot to do in a film that was already going to be a hard film to make. And I think I watch it and I've got a soft spot because it does the things that I want Star Wars to do, but it never hits the high of the original trilogy. I think it does everything it should, but at times I kind of think it stands out more than Force Awakens and Last Jedi. But then at other times it's sort of like, it's just rectifying what's been before. So the trilogy as a whole, I think, is messy, but there are things in there that I absolutely love. Yeah.
Do you think it would have benefited from if J.J. Abrams did the whole trilogy and they didn't have Rian Johnson step in for the second one, or not step in, he just was going to do it? Because who was going to do the third one?
Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah, then he dropped out. So
yeah. And I think if JJ had done all three, I think it would have been a completely different thing, because I think he would have had, like, he set up what everything was going to happen, so he knew where it was going. The problem is you get somebody who doesn't see that same vision and they see it as being something else. And for me, sorry, go for it.
No, you go.
Okay, so I was just going to say that the thing that hits me the most is, and we talked about this with the original trilogy, that the original trilogy doesn't have gags, it has humor. And that was something that they were really aware of when they were writing Empire Strikes Back, is that they were, aware that it was a darker film and it couldn't have gags, it could just have humor. And I think that's what Force Awakens does, and I think that's what Rise of Skywalker does. I think Last Jedi is a modern film in the sense that the humor in it is a gag, which is clear from the off. The fact that there's a your mum joke within 5 minutes of the film, that's just not, for me, that's not a time and a place for Star Wars humor. That's something that you'd see in Marvel, or something else that's more a modern.
Don't you start picking on Marvel again?
No, but not picking on Marvel, but more as in in the sense that Marvel is set in the modern world. It's set in.
Yes.
It feels out of place in Star Wars, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it
was
built way back when, so the humor was.
Yeah. And I find a lot of the jokes in Star Wars are kind of relevant to the universe. So there's that line that Luke Skywalker says where he's basically saying you couldn't hit, when he's about to shoot, he's like, couldn't hit it's like a barn door, but they contextualize it in Star Wars and couldn't hit the broadside of a moisture evaporator. And it's kind of like silly humor that fits into the universe, but it's like a quick comment that someone would make in a Western film about not being able to hit a barn door. It's just like, they're like out of this world jokes that fit into the universe, and they're not, like you said, like your mum joke, which I remember I watched that scene, I was like, oh no, I like Poe Dameron.
And it's also things like, just to sort of pick a specific out of it, when I was watching Rise of Skywalker, there's a really nice interaction between Rey and Poe when he comes back with the Falcon, and it's sort of damaged, and their rapport, that's the humor. It's just like quick lines that are back and forth, and you kind of think that's what Star Wars is. That's the humor, is that it's between these people, it's the back and forth, and it's how they're interacting with the world. Whereas Last Jedi, there's a lot of things in there where this would just be really funny to do, but it's not necessarily funny for the world. It's just, as an outsider, it'd be funny to see this.
That's the Disney effect, isn't it? Like you said
before, it is.
It's trying to cater to
wider audience.
The wider audience. It's trying to cater to an audience that may have never seen Star Wars before.
Mm-hmm.
So they come in, they're like, "Oh yeah, that bit was really funny," but they don't know the way you feel about it, and I'm sure millions of people feel about it.
I mean, despite the way we feel about it, it worked, didn't it? Because isn't it the highest grossing Star Wars film of all time?
Well, because there's so much fanfare before it, isn't there? And it's such a build-up. But you think as well, when we talk about the humour, that there would be people that would have seen The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise first before they watched the original trilogy, and they probably watched the original trilogy and think, man, there wasn't funny at all. Like, where's the funny? And they would have just found the humour that we found good in the original trilogy. They would have found that completely out of place. So, but they will love this new trilogy when they compared to the old trilogy.
I saw I don't know if it's a bit skipping ahead, but I saw there's a.
We love skipping ahead.
Not jumping onto Mandalorian, but they did. It was just something of the special features they did the making of, and there was like a round table bit where the directors were talking. What's the chap with the cowboy hat? His name's
Dave
lost.
Filoni.
Yes, Dave Filoni, and he says about Star Wars being a generational thing. So he's like, whether or not you enjoy certain parts of it, there's like everyone has a generation of Star Wars that they like and can draw that from within pretty much all the plot, which I massively agree with. And I think although I'm on side with Nick with the sequel trilogy. I think there are kids who will have watched that as their first Star Wars, and that will be their original trilogy to them. They'll enjoy that most of all. And like same as people who started off with the prequels, or like us starting off with the originals. I think Star Wars is very inclusive in that, although not every film is for everyone has something in one of those films.
People who love the prequels, aren't there? There's a huge amount of people who love the prequels, and that's like that. I didn't see the original trilogy at the cinema because I wasn't born, but I didn't go and see any different versions at the cinema. And my first proper memory of going to see Star Wars was Phantom Menace.
Yep.
So although I didn't enjoy it that much, but those ones were the ones that I saw a lot more before I even saw the original trilogy properly, and at least so I remember it. And there'll be another trilogy down the line, won't there? I mean, there's too much money in it. The future of what's going on, but there'll be, out of these new TV shows like Mando and everything, there'll be something that's born that will be
the new.
Obviously, the original trilogy will be the center, won't it? And it's obviously going to be in the past, or it's going to be in the future. It'll come over, and it could be about anything. But then there'll be another generation, like my kids' generation, will probably grow up with this next Star Wars trilogy, and now the original one would just seem either terrible or amazing or whatever. So, but I stand, like Harry said, he agreed with you, and I kind of just sit firmly where you sit as well, Nick. I loved when I saw Force Awakens. I really enjoyed it. I got a real buzz out of it, and I thought, wow, this is there's a lot of good here. I loved a lot of the cast. I loved Oscar Isaac and things like that, so I was sold on those characters. And the humor didn't sit 100% with me either. I thought something like BB-8 is more than enough, because that's like the cute, funny factor. That's all you need in that respect. And I actually came out of Last Jedi. I went with my friend Stina and some people from the cinema, and a lot of them are big Star Wars fans. And I think Stina and I just kind of sat on the fence. This person that I work with, we left and we were like, that was really good. Like, I thought it was really good, because I just enjoy the Star Wars films, like Harry said as well. I just enjoy it. I'm not a huge fanboy like I am with like Marvel stuff and everything. And when we left, we were surrounded by people who were just so angry with it. They just, I can't believe they did this, and why was Luke Skywalker like drinking milk from a monster tit and all that stuff.
That was weird.
It was just like, it was just like they were going on and on. But I was like, wow, but what about those red knights that Kylo Ren had? They were bloody amazing.
That's definitely the thing.
I loved the end scene with the sand and the, it was. I thought some of it was really good. So
that's the thing. Like I do, as much as I shit on that film, because there are things that I seriously I think are wrong with it, but there are also things that do work, especially visually. I think there are some really nice visuals.
That's it. It's visually. Yeah. I think it's really good, and I think that's what, when I came out the cinema, because there was so much. I remember just all the noise that came with it as well. The noise of the last scene when the ships are going after and Kylo Ren's coming forward, and I remember getting a bit of goosebumps. Like, oh man, this is just awesome. And it was just, I think it was just all the red smoke and everything. And visually, it drew me. And that's the same with the Red Knights, or the Knights of Ren, are they called? No, they were the other ones. They're from Rise.
They were
they were all in black.
Snoke's Guard, weren't they? Yeah. The red ones.
And they, the Red Guards, that's what they're called. And I thought, again, visually, and I thought it looked really good. But there's a lot of nonsense in there, isn't there? Like when Princess Leia flies back in and everything like that.
That was like I remember actually.
It's really
you
odd.
might remember this as well, Nick, when we were in cinema, because we have a very dull opinion of Last Jedi. But there was when we went to see it in the cinema, we saw it in IMAX. We saw it like a midnight screening. We were super amped for it, and the whole film, I was just like sinking inside. Of, like you say, the visuals of it are really strong, but I was just not agreeing with the direction. And I just remember the point where Princess Leia's in space, and because Carrie Fisher had not long passed away, and I thought that was going to be her cinematic death. And I was like, you know what? That's actually beautiful. Like, it's really like touching. And I was like, big moment. Like, and it's like a pause to just like appreciate her. And then it's like the finger twitches and she flies back through space.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking, oh my God. And a girl in a row behind us voiced like my exact thoughts out loud. And she just went, is this really necessary?
But why? That would have been, we said exactly the same, a few of us. Like, why couldn't that have just been it? Like, it's not like she hasn't been The Force Awakens was a big film for her, wasn't it? Her and
yeah.
Harrison Ford and stuff, or Han Solo. So
Yeah.
it should have just been done there. And I think a lot of people probably would have felt a bit. If you take that bit out of it, you take some of the Luke Skywalker stuff out of it. There's a good film there somewhere.
There's cause to hang on, isn't there?
There is.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that's the thing that then Rise does quite well, is that it does give Leia a good end. And I don't think, like when I watch that back, I don't think it looks weird. I think it sort of works. And the way that they create that moment between like her and Kylo Ren as he's sort of becoming a Jedi, and then they introduce Han, I think that hits all the right emotional beats, because when Han appears on the screen in Rise, fully wasn't expecting it. And for me, it kind of just hit that moment of like, oh my God, that was really kind of big.
Do you know what, though? I actually think Leia's death in Last Jedi is, if she died in that way, would have been more beautiful. I feel like that would have been, like I said, visually, like angelic. So I feel like that's definitely something they could have played on. But I will say, I think the one constant through all of the sequel films I thought was, in everyone had no issue with whatsoever, was Adam Driver's performance as Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
I
amazing.
was huge fan.
I like Rey's performance
really
as well.
different.
I thought both of them.
Yeah, but I felt like in the second one,
Last Jedi.
Last Jedi, thank you, brain again. She's just suddenly a Jedi. There's no training. It's like she meets Luke. Luke's like, I'm not training you, and she just then goes on some weird spiritual back and forth where she has visions of Kylo, and then suddenly at the end she's like moving mountains, and like I don't get how you got there without
That's
being
the thing, though,
like
different directors, isn't it? Trying to cater to an audience, try and change it up a little bit, and it just, I think that's where it lost its way, didn't it? This trilogy, it just lost its way a little bit with too many cooks in the kitchen at the end, too many fans complaining, and obviously being very rude to. It is Rian Johnson, isn't it? That's his name.
Yeah, Rian or Ryan. I always think it's Ryan.
Is it Henry Cavill or Henry Cavill? No one knows. Apart from Henry, we'll never be sure.
Yeah.
But I think overall, so we can kind of go on from this trilogy, move away from it a bit, is that I think there's definitely a lot of good in there. I think there's also a lot of bad in there, but I could watch that trilogy and just enjoy it again. I'm not going to sit here and moan about it, because I've got no need to, because overall I thought it was fine. I think there's going to be a better trilogy made in the future. That will probably be, well, we're going to talk about the prequels, obviously, but the prequels and this one, I think there'll be a little bit of a distant memory eventually, and the original trilogy and something else coming along. So I really think they're building something really good now. I think they've got a really good rhythm with who's on board to help, thanks to something like The Mandalorian and Solo and Rogue One, which we'll obviously talk about as well. But out of the three then, unless there's anything else you two want to go into with the original trilogy, what's your favourite out of the three?
The only thing I want to go into, just before we quickly pick them, is I want to say that Harry and I experienced 4DX for the first time with Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, we did.
Which was one of the funniest experiences, because the opening where Kylo's flying through space, honestly, Harry and I lost it. I was in tears. I don't know, like, it wasn't the severity of the scene. It was just like, and we'd never done 4DX before, but all the emotions, like the thing was, I was like, I wasn't sure if I wanted more of the the fourth wall element, like all the like chair shaking and like stuff, but it was kind of dampened by the fact I was wearing this big coat. So there was there's a thing in the seat that like blows like wind past your ears to like to like give you the sensation of like movement or wind in scenes, and you got that as the chairs are like going crazy. So that scene's kicking off, you're like veering on these seats like as he's like swooping through space, and like the music is super intense, but then there's these like air things on the seat that are just going, which don't make a noise, it's just like you feel the air. But because I've got this like winter coat thing on, like waterproof, it's just like blowing across the top of where my hood is sat on this chair. So like we're like jerking back and forth. There's all these like different effects going off, and like this, we're trying to concentrate on the film, but I'm just being constantly distracted by this like
noughties coming off the back of my jacket. I'm like, this is fucking disorienting. I don't know what is happening. So I think Nick clocks it as well, that I'm just like tripping out in this chair. Like, I'm not enjoying this. I'm so out of my depth. But then just hysterical laughter. And everyone else in there is trying to enjoy the film. And we're like, thank God we didn't see it in 4DX for the first time, because this would have been awful.
Would have majorly changed it. It was just the fact that, like, during the opening of the scene where they do the scroll, your entire road like lifts up, and then
like tilts, and
as it tilts down to Kylo going onto the planet at the start, just suddenly your entire row is just like shaking and going everywhere. And Harry and I were like, what the fuck?
It's like a really violent massage chair.
Yeah.
And then you get the water effects as well.
Yeah.
So what's your favourite then, guys?
So mine is probably going to be Force Awakens.
Harry?
I'd agree. I think Force Awakens is my favourite of the three.
I agree as well. So it's 3 in favour of The Force Awakens. Take that, rest of the trilogy.
How boring. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the new trilogy covered then, with since Disney took over Star Wars. But that did open the door for a couple of things film-wise as well. During, I think some of these were in between. So Rogue One, that came out first. Was that in between Force Awakens and Last Jedi? Am I right?
I think so. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it is.
I think that was 2016, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, and then it was Last Jedi, and then it was Solo, and then it was Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
So Rogue One, let's just start there. I mean, that's a fucking amazing film.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
So good, isn't it? And that actually kind of, when you had Force Awakens and then you had Rogue One in between, I think that's a little bit why Last Jedi probably didn't feel all that great generally, because, I mean, you go out of the cinema after Rogue One and Darth Vader's just stepped in in that ship, and he's just kicking ass, taking names, kicking ass, doing some crazy shit. And you're just like, fuck, that's so good.
Yeah.
And then you just literally want to go and watch the original trilogy straight away. So fantastic.
The coolest
from your reactions, you loved it, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say the coolest thing about that Vader moment as well is that it completely changes. You know how I was saying last week how I always found the opening of A New Hope boring. When you watch Rogue One and then you go into the opening of New Hope, there's so much tension there now, knowing what they've gone through. Because for me, it just completely changes that opening. That you open up and it's on the ship and it's getting shot at, and you're like, oh, first time you see it, they're like, oh, they're just being hunted. Knowing what's come before that you're like, Vader has just destroyed so much of them. It's just, everything is just heightened. Yeah, absolutely love Rogue One. I think it's smart through and through. The storytelling's really good. The characters are great. It's got that Star Wars humor. It's just, everything's awesome about it. Takes chances. It's bold.
It's my favorite Star Wars film. I don't know if that's so bad to say, but it is.
I think it's valid.
Yeah, I think it is
my
my
favorite Star Wars film.
Yeah,
I loved it.
Yeah,
I'd say it's my favorite. After I watched it, I was like, it's way up there in terms of like material that bridges the two, like the prequels and the original trilogy. And I know it's very close to the original trilogy, but there's still a lot of nods to the prequels that they put in there, which I think, like, they threw the original design for what became the Juggernaut in the prequels, the like troop transport, which was an old AT-AT design, I believe, but they bleed that in, and you're like, that's a nice nod to what they carried over from the prequel trilogy and things like that. But yeah, it felt very like true to the original like tone.
Yeah.
So I was a huge fan of it. Yeah, and again, Krennic, great casting.
Yeah,
so good.
Amazing.
Yeah, Ben Mendelsohn in that film was like my Adam Driver for the Disney trilogy.
Yeah.
Just huge casting. Loved him.
Yeah.
I'm a big Ben Mendelsohn fan anyway. But yeah, he was that first opening scene, and with the Death Troopers, and when he goes to like the farming world, just so good.
And I love that it rectifies the glaringly obvious issue with the Death Star. That you're like, how the hell did they build that weapon? And there's just one specific point you hit, and it's all gone.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It's great, isn't it?
It's so smart.
It's such. There's so many jokes about it after the original trilogy, and even obviously with the prequels and stuff. They just talk about, like, you see like Family Guy stuff, like, oh, why did they make this one little bit where they
Yeah.
could just do it. It's like,
Yeah.
there's a fucking reason.
Yeah.
And here it
Yeah.
is.
And it's so like
Yeah.
heartfelt as well. It's not like it's just they've just created a way around it. It's like they've actually integrated it with like the emotion of the story.
Yeah.
It's connected to the father and daughter kind of connection.
It's not like a throwaway spin-off. It's like an
No.
integrated component, which is
Yeah.
great because it like you say, it carries on like instantly into A New Hope. There's no waiting around. You see the ending of that film, which is off the chain.
Yeah.
And it did, yet again, skip to Mandalorian briefly, but it did for Darth Vader what the Mandalorian has done for Boba Fett.
Yeah.
In that it's like basically, although Darth Vader does some awesome things in the originals, there's that sort of clunky 70s 80s feel about it. So like, although I love all the lightsaber action, you never quite, when they made the prequels and you saw all the crazy Jedi leaping around, Darth Maul kind of stuff, you were like, will Darth Maul murder the Darth Vader we saw in the originals? And then, which upsets you slightly, you're like, Darth Vader's got to be the best, right? And then they did the ending scene of Rogue One, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Darth Vader is the ultimate badass. So
I think they must have loved making that scene. They must have known that it was gold. They must have been like, oh, yes.
There's a lot of there was a lot of fan service in that as well, like behind the scenes, isn't there? I think they said, I want to get this right, but there was something about when they filmed it, they brought people in who were like major, like Vader fans and things like that, and had them as extras. You might know about this, Nick. I feel like I don't want to say something that is a lie, but I'm sure
I say things that are lies all the time from articles I read many moons ago that I'm just misquoting.
I mean, as far as I recall, you played Darth Vader, didn't you, Luke, in that scene?
I did.
massive. Like, you kept that quiet. But no, there was a lot of it where I think, as much as it was fan service to people who were fans of Darth Vader in the originals, they obviously did a lot of things behind the scenes, which I can't remember the specifics of, where they got a lot of people involved because of their connection to the story, and you know, got people on set who would be just as hyped to see it early as a lot of other folk. But
that's one of the really good things about Disney, actually, and this kind of thing. I think because they've got Star Wars now as like a constant moving thing, that all these people who are associated or are in love with Star Wars in some way are getting a chance to play in that world, whether it's just as an extra or whatever. Like Force Awakens, when we watched that back the other day, it was just full of like cameos. It was just like, oh, there's that person, there's Daniel Craig, there's that person. It was just...
Where's Tom Hardy, by the way? Didn't he have a cameo as a stormtrooper?
Yeah, I think he had a cameo
something.
in Rise.
Does he have any speaking lines?
It's in Rise. No, I don't think he does. I think he just walks past, doesn't he?
I couldn't remember where they cut it, because I know they cut, was it William and Harry, the royal?
Yes.
So I can't remember if they cut Tom Hardy as well. There's just...
It's hard to please everyone.
Yeah. There's
I mean, that's the thing, again, saying to Mando, that's all these directors.
Yeah.
You know, just it's a great director. You know, all these people popping up that... I mean, that's... Well, maybe, again, we are skipping, but that's the thing with different directors for the newer trilogy, is that in this scenario it didn't work out because you're trying to tell one big story in not a lot of time, over 3 films, like 7 or 8 hours or whatever it is, whereas The Mandalorian is obviously really spread out and everyone gets that episode to, you know, Jon Favreau he's the writer, isn't he?
Yeah,
the whole thing.
Yeah,
I think he's got a couple of like co-writers on some of the episodes, but he's like, this is the plan, you go and direct and you can play with these characters and you visually and everything like that, but he's obviously on board. But whereas the new trilogy, that's where it's lost its way, like we said, because you wanted to give everyone this opportunity to be part of this world, but it didn't flow and it didn't work 100%. So
yeah, and I think that's the thing with Rogue One, because it's an insular thing, even though it is, you know, it's connecting like A New Hope to something else before it. It works because it's so specific to what it just has to do. It has to just tell this story, and it works. It's just, here's 2 hours of getting to this point in A New Hope that you all know, but you've never really thought about. Like when they came out and said, we're making a film about the people who got the Death Star plans, you kind of think, oh, that's a really bizarre storyline to just pick and go for, but sure. And then, you know, I remember releasing that concept art, and they were kind of saying how it's going to be this like heist kind of espionage thriller kind of thing, and suddenly to me anyway, I was kind of thinking, oh my God, like Star Wars is way more than just this sci-fi storytelling world now. You can really do whatever you want. And Rogue One, I think, is the shining example of it, that I feel like even just people who aren't massive Star Wars fans can enjoy that film, because it's just a really good, as they said, a heist thriller kind of tale.
I feel as well it was for me at least, I was not sick of it, but I feel like the focus for so long in all the films before had just been Jedi and Sith, and like I enjoy the lightsaber fights, but it gets and all the force powers and things, but it's almost like a competition to like do it better or improve it or make a longer fight sequence or include some new force things. And I think that's where you struggle that's where like they lose control a little bit, and they put things in which are controversial that some people like, some people hate, like the lightsaber thing in Rise of Skywalker, where they transfer the lightsaber through the Force and things like that, where it's like, I've got no problem with it, but a lot of people are like, it's a tool to put in to make things evolve, so it's naturally going to be controversial. So I was glad that Rogue One sort of completely steered away from Jedi. It's not about the Force, besides like the obvious "May the Force be with you" kind of stuff, but that's kind of just a running quote. But everything about it was not, there was no action in it besides the Vader sequence, which made it more poignant, that focuses purely on like crazy duels and like force battles. It was nice to be more grounded and like focused like on it. Was that things were more terrifying, I think, because when you've got like the dark and light Jedi Sith thing going on, you know there's like an absolute evil on screen as a force of good, and you're kind of like, you know where you're going with it. With this, it was really tense because you've got no Jedi showing up to save everyone. You've got like an espionage mission. The Krennic, who's like this crazy Imperial tactician, who's just awful, like Nazi level, like classic Imperial. And then they've got the Death Troopers, which, although throughout the course of the film, they're very much like original Boba Fett. They sort of loom and look badass for most of the film and don't do a lot. And then when you see them in action, like in the latter parts of the film, you're like, oh, these are great. And there's like elements of terror that they carry throughout the film, which there's no Jedi escape from. It's like these things they have to deal with themselves, and it's got more gravity to it, I think. Whereas if you throw a Jedi in there, suddenly it's like, oh, it's okay, things are going to be fine because the Jedi will save them. And this didn't have that. It was very pro-Imperial.
With their own different take on it, which is, I mean, I'm looking forward because they're going to do a TV show based on
Cassian Andor.
Yeah, Cassian, yeah. So, which I would love there to be more in that bit between the prequel and the original trilogy. I think they could shove a trilogy in there if they could do it, but there's good. These TV shows are great to explore that time, I think.
And what I love, like jumping off the fact that there's very little Jedi in Rogue One, is that I love the moments that are peppered throughout what Disney have done, where it's references to Jedi. Like, I think that's part of the reason I love Force Awakens, is there's that sense that even though there's Rey and, you know, she's on a journey, the big Jedi Luke is missing. It's like he's a rumor. And I love that they went with that idea that it's just, there's this rumor of this ultimate Jedi out there, but we don't know where he is. And, you know, I
think it's why I was so gutted by his representation in Last Skywalker. Last Jedi. Yeah. Like it's built the whole suspense, like you say, of Luke being missing in Force Awakens, and then the ending is that incredible, like, oh my god! Because I was never a Luke Skywalker fan as a kid. I've always been a villains fan, and I was like, Han Solo's great. Luke was like, I didn't really much care for him. I felt like I wanted more of like a Han Solo gunslinger type hero. But that aside, when I saw Luke at the first time, in however many years at the end of Force Awakens, I was like, huge moment. And it got sort of robbed in the following film.
And I think that's the thing, is that Force Awakens does the same as Rogue One, in the sense that Force Awakens has that scene with Han where he's on the ship and he says how it's all true, the Jedi, everything, it's all true. And like, he stood in the same spot where in A New Hope he's like, it's a load of mumbo jumbo. And you're like, that's an arc. And then when you get into Rogue One, the only real reference besides Vader is and the may force be with you kind of lines is Chirutu, I think his name is, where he's doing the whole,
is
I'm
it
one with the
Chirrut?
Force. Yeah,
The Force is with me. Yeah,
yeah, that is amazing. That it's like the Jedi are just this thing that is there in the background for a lot of people. It just exists as like a religion or a way of life or something, but it doesn't necessarily always impact all the skirmishes and all the battles that are going on. You know, that we've seen so much of the Clone Wars, and a lot of that is based around Jedi because they are around. Whereas Rogue One is set at a time when, you know, there's very few Jedi, and so it's become this myth, this religion, this thing that people still believe in, but there isn't necessarily proof of it. It's like faith, it's like a hope that is out there. And I think Disney tap into that really well at specific spots, which we'll get to in Mando, because, you know, it's peppered through that as well. And I think that's one of the things that they really do have to take credit for, that they've built a world around going, like, it doesn't have to be Jedi, but Jedi are always in the background in some way as a belief system. So yeah,
it's an absolute bonus as well for people like me who love focus on the like nitty gritty, the underhive stuff and the villains, because inevitably when a Jedi shows up, all my favorite characters die. So like, I quite enjoy them getting a bit more time on screen before their demise, which this has given me in a lot of ways. Yeah, especially like Rogue One, and like all the characters within, like the Imperial presence throughout the whole thing, and then like the Darth Vader spotlight at the end, and then with all the other films that have sort of been around it, like Solo and the TV series Mandalorian. Big for it.
As well as like their representation of the Death Star in Rogue One is one of the coolest things. Yeah, they just managed to make that thing absolutely scary. Like when it's upside down and stuff, you're just like, oh my god, I never thought.
Yeah, again, how I've skipped this as well. Sorry, the CGI of Moff Tarkin.
Oh yeah,
awesome. That's something which has to be credited, because I remember watching that, and there's the first scene you see him, and it's like he's looking out the window at the Death Star being made, and it's just his reflection. I was like, oh, that's great CGI. It's really tasteful. Like, and I was like, all you're going to get is his reflection in the mirror, and I was like, that's awesome. Such a cool touch. And then he turns around and talks, and he's fully in the scene. I was like, oh. Wow, I did not think it would go this far. And then he plays like a huge part in the film. There's a lot of back and forth with him and Krennic, and you're like, all the Imperial things I enjoyed were like huge on that film. I was so into it, and like I love the back and forth, like sort of duel between Tarkin and Krennic, like struggling for credit over the Death Star when it's really Krennic's thing, and Tarkin's like higher ranking, and it's just like, nah, it's mine. But so many good things in that film. I could talk for ages on that alone.
Well, you mentioned their Solo as well then. So what were your thoughts on Solo? Because I've only seen Solo once. I saw it after it came out of the cinema. I didn't get a chance to see it at cinema.
Yeah, we saw it.
It didn't do too well at the box office. It didn't live up to high hopes, but I actually thought it was very good. I thought, who's the guy who plays Solo in it?
Alden Ehrenreich, I think it is.
I thought he did a good job. I thought actually it's another one that they typically get quite right in these films, don't they? The cast, again, it comes from a lot of people wanting to play in these parts, but I don't feel like it's something I have to watch again and again. But when I did watch it, the only time I've watched it, I thought it was very good, and I came out of it thinking, actually, I can't believe this didn't do better. But I think there was something to do with advertising all the time. It came out at the wrong time.
Well, it came out after
the summer, didn't it?
It was out after Last Jedi. So that was like
so it was a combination, wasn't it? Last Jedi, and usually Star Wars have been coming out in the winter, hadn't they? So it came out a bit earlier than it usually would have done. But I mean, we don't have to go into unless there's a lot to go into Solo. But what did you both think of it?
I loved it. Like, I've watched it back a couple of times. I think I've maybe seen it 3 or 4 times, and I love it every time because it's just like a Star Wars adventure. Like, it doesn't. Like, I don't feel like that film has to do anything other than give me a Han and Chewie adventure, and I feel like it does that in barrel loads. I think it gives you so many cool things. The idea that there's a criminal syndicate existing in that world is just awesome. I want more of that. Like, I want them to explore that in a Disney Plus series. Give me
Star
Darth
Wars
Maul.
crime is the best thing.
Yeah, like give me Darth Maul. Give me what's her name? The lady from Game of Thrones. I can't remember.
Oh yeah,
Emilia
what her
Clarke.
character's
Emilia
name?
Clarke. Yes, I actually think she was great in it. I think she's a really cool character. I thought her acting was really good in it. And again, give her room in a Disney Plus show to just explore all of that world. I think something like Solo, I know they're talking about whether they give it a sequel or whatever, and I think it's picked up popularity since it's hit Disney Plus. And I think that's something where you could easily give all of those characters a TV series and give me an 8-hour solo adventure that does all the crime syndicate stuff, builds on it. I think it would just be absolute magic. Yeah, I really, really love Solo. I think it's great.
Nice.
Yeah. Hughes?
Harry?
Yeah, much the same. I thought it was great. I have only seen it the once though, which is strange. I definitely rewatch it. It's just I'm terrible at finding time for things. I need a tight schedule and a man with a whip. But like, yeah, Solo was awesome. I loved it, and it was one which I was sort of what's the word? Like anxious about before. I remember seeing the trailers. Like it looks good, but I wasn't. It was the casting as well. So what do we say his name was again? The guy who plays Solo?
Alden Ehrenreich, I believe it is.
That's right. So I saw the pictures of him when he was cast, and I was like, I can see what they're getting at. But I was never like, I was like, that's a great casting. It didn't like hit me until is it the first shot of the film where he's looking through there's like a vent or something, and the lights on his face are like orange or yellow light, maybe.
I think
there's a part of the film either
I
way.
think it was in a trailer as well. I think there was a shot of him in a trailer like that, and we were both like that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that shot and being like, that actually genuinely looks like Harrison Ford. So, yeah, as soon as I sort of got into it, yeah, big fan. And there was a lot of Imperial design played with in that film as well, which, yeah, again, huge on anything villain. So I was a massive fan of like the mag train scene and the different troopers that could like they had like magnetic shoes so they could walk on all the surfaces, and then they had the one I really loved was the beginning where they had like the cops. So that was like stormtroopers that were basically on like police bikes, but I mean they were on speeders, but they were so cool because it was like the Endor troopers from Return of the Jedi, but with some other cool tech. I was like, yeah, they're great. And it had that like Imperial customs thing, so it was very like it was very Imperial dominated. A lot of the stuff in the intro, and then like I say, the film delves into like the criminal underworld. So yeah, I'm all over that.
With the Imperial stuff, you get the like trench warfare kind of sequence.
Yeah, of course.
That's awesome. Again, something I wasn't expecting from Star Wars is to see that kind of warfare. Like it just grim and gritty and really grimy, and you're kind of like, oh fuck, like that would be
the mud troopers, wasn't it? The design was, and they were great. Yeah. So much Imperial design. So that had me right by the balls.
Also, can't miss Lando.
Yeah,
amazing casting.
Really good.
Like plays it really well. Just so cool.
Is he playing him in the TV show as well?
They haven't announced, and when we get on to talking about the future of it, I've got an interesting idea for how they do Lando TV series.
Nice.
Just if they're looking for a writer, I'm just going to put myself out there right now and say I've got an idea. This is it.
Yeah. Well, Luke will probably speak to them because, like, he was in Rogue One as Vader, so just put a good word in, Luke. Yeah.
Not just in Rogue One, the original trilogy as well.
Oh shit!
Oh wow!
Yeah,
the plot thickens.
But they didn't get you from Revenge of the Sith, or was it just original trilogy?
That was CGI.
Hayden Christensen, nudged in, so they had to put Luke on the bench for that one. Yeah,
they wanted someone prettier.
Yeah. Ridiculous as well because he's not prettier. So why they played that game, I have no idea.
Well, let's jump into something that we're probably all really looking forward to talking about as it's fresh in our brains, which is obviously Disney decided they were going to make a TV show based on, well, it's called The Mandalorian. So it's based on the Mandalore, I guess.
Yeah.
You love it, both of you? I think we all love it, don't we?
Yeah. It's good. Yeah. It's good. I will hands down preface this with I genuinely, no holds barred, think it is the greatest Star Wars property since the originals by a stretch. There's been nothing in it that I've that's made me cringe. There's been nothing in it that like I've disliked. I've watched it weekly with I've wished away 2 seasons worth of my life just waiting for Fridays. Just like, okay, this week, please get it done. The Mandalorian is Friday, and I've got friends
awesome,
watching it. Oh, it's strange because I feel like I've aged like massively. I don't know what I've done with my time since watching the first season of Mandalorian to finishing the second season, but yeah, it's good.
It's good to look for. It's one of the first. I mean, I think we spoke about it on the last podcast. The Marvel TV shows coming up is that there's something quite nice about waiting weekly for it because you get so much anticipation for it, and it makes you appreciate the episode a lot more. And you can sort of think about the episode, like, you know, me and my wife watched it together, and you kind of pick it apart afterwards, and you think, like, that was really good, and you talk about it a few days later as well. And you're so like, for it to come on a Friday, so because we didn't have Disney Plus in Norway until 2 months ago, so I didn't get to see the first season until 2 months ago, and then it was released weekly until it ended.
Still, wow,
Ooh.
Yeah. So they released it. The Disney Plus started, and then you had a Mandalorian episode every week, and then season 2 started. Crazy. So we had that weekly. So we've had a consistent run of Mandalorian for several weeks now. It's just really good. I mean, I love Baby Yoda. I know he's called the Child Own. He's actually got a name now as well. Grogu. That's the one.
Yeah, you got it.
So I love Grogu. I think it's so well done. I love all the director's takes. I love some of the episodes are a little bit shorter, some are longer. I just think it's just class, isn't it?
I've got nothing bad to say about it. You could have this as an episode of the podcast on its own, and I feel like I wouldn't have enough time to explain all the things I love about it in an hour. Yeah, it's beyond description. I'd love it so much, man. It's so good.
Just everything, like from a storytelling point of view. The first episode's really strong. It just sets up everything. It sets up what they're going for and the feel of it, and just like the end when it kind of gets to him finding Grogu, you're just like, oh fuck, I didn't see that coming. And then it proceeds to do that for the rest of season 1 and 2, where it's just every episode sort of like, fuck, didn't think they'd go down that route or do that or whatever. And the humor again, strong. Like, not gags, it's proper humor. It's just amazing.
I think it's the most faithful thing as well to like original technology, original storytelling, and like all every detail in it has been thought about. Like I don't know if you guys have watched they did the making of for the first
gallery.
Season. Yeah, the gallery, that's right. And it was there's 8 episodes of that. Yeah. But it's for the first season. I'm hoping they do one for season 2 as well, because they easily could open that up.
I think there's like an episode coming. I don't know if it's like a full season of it. It's just one episode.
But still,
Christmas Day, season 2.
Oh, brilliant!
Gallery,
yeah,
I think.
Oh, great! Because I remember, like, although every episode, I think there's a moment in every episode where my jaw has hit the floor. Or I watch films quite quietly. Like people have said, when I watch films, I look angry. I have a heavy concentration face when I watch a film. I'm like stern. I'm focused, and I take it all in.
Unless the seat's moving on you.
Unless the
unless the seat's moving. Or it's Ant-Man with that one line. Lost it.
Oh man, yeah. But, I mean, there are things that catch me out, but generally speaking, if I'm watching films, I'm pretty focused. But with Mandalorian, I think there was a moment in every single episode where my jaw hit the floor, or I actually like exclaimed. I was like, wow, oh my god. Or there'd just be like some under my breath comment, and it never stopped. And I think because it's so faithful to all the things, like I've said, I enjoy about Star Wars, it ticks every single box for me. And then when you see the making of, and it's made by people, and I've said this to Nick a lot before, and I think things are more successful creatively when people who come together to create it care about what it is. Right? It's not like although they've got to make money from it, I feel like all the directors who are on board this have a combined love for Star Wars, whichever, like I say, part of it, Star Wars, that they're introduced to, they all are coming from the same direction, and they've all contributed to something that, you know, they've all picked like little details out of all the originals or all the films they've enjoyed that have come before it and brought it to the table, and it's made it amazing. Like the creature design as well. There's I mean, are we spoilers Are we spoilers safe here?
Spoil away, man. Spoil away.
So obviously the episode with the spider creature in season 2, great. But I didn't realize that was an original design for the Rancor in Return of the Jedi. So it was one of the concepts for the creature in Jabba's palace. They just brought it back, and they've done it with a lot of things, like the Blurgs. They were in what's the Ewok story? They did like a spin-off story about the Ewoks, and there's Blurgs in that which are stop motion, and they did the same. They're not all stop motion, but they had stop motion Blurgs in certain sequences, and it's just so.
It's
so
great, isn't it? Because
there's
a wealth of stuff that they could tap into, and obviously they do, don't they? Like you said, with the Jon Favreau and the directors and stuff, and things they probably remember. It's really well done. It's really well written as well, and there's so many nice touches. You know, like the Mandalorian, you see him take his helmet off once, but for a whole 2 seasons, you only see his face once, and then it's just the perfect time.
What do you get? You get the end of the first series, obviously. You get the Imperial facility, and then you get the very last episode. Did he take it off 3 times? I thought he took it off just twice. Yeah, he takes it off in the end of the first episode because the IG-88, is it IG-11 or IG-88? Yeah, the droid heals him, so it sees his face.
That's the one I remember. I don't remember the second.
Then in the second series, he takes it off at the facility to hack into the
terminal. Of course he does, yeah.
And then at the end, he takes it off to look at Grogu, doesn't he? So,
still perfect moment.
Which is a really nice nod. I realised I can't remember who I saw it. Someone brought it up, but like a little parallel to the Vader looking upon Luke with his own eyes at the end of Return of the Jedi when he dies. It's it's kind of like a similar tone to it. I was like, although it's not direct and no one's dying, it's kind of like it's like reaching out to see his real face. So it's very thoughtful.
Yeah, but that's the whole series. The whole series feels thoughtful in that there's an emotional current running through it with the relationship between Mando and Grogu.
Yeah.
But then as a fan, there's like this emotional relationship with the creators like Favreau and Filoni kind of leading it, because it's like they've dug into every Star Wars archive from video games to books to like everything. It feels like they've gone into it and then gone like, okay, we'll take this bit and put it in this episode, and this will be a nice reference here, and we want to show bits of this world that you haven't seen before, like seeing an Imperial celebration in the second last episode. That blew me away, because I was like, that's something you've never seen before. You always see rebels celebrating, you always see the positive.
And the TIE fighters saving the day, that was a great touch.
It's like they want to show this world from every angle that they can and give you the best representation of it you can get, which I think is just utter genius, really. So I love their representation of it, and the fact that the core of it is just this relationship between these 2 people. And even though it's a lot of like, well, Mando's going to go visit this planet in this episode, he's going to visit this planet, you never lose that emotional core, and there's always something to kind of give you the reaction of going like, fuck.
Every episode.
It's just utter genius. I really do. I miss it already. The fact that it, like, the finale aired.
I'm just going to rewatch it because, like, my mum's mad into Star Wars, the originals. So I told her about the series, and she was like, "Well, let's watch it." So every Friday, it's like a family thing. We watch The Mandalorian. So
my wife, her brother, and her sister, they haven't seen season 2 yet, so she's very excited that she can rewatch it again now.
Yeah, that's it.
Just 1 week removed.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's good that you've got it all back to back. But yeah, so we've been watching it, my mother and I, straight through, like all of them. And she hasn't watched the last episode yet, but we're going to watch it on Christmas Day. So she's got that to catch up to. But my dad he watched Star Wars when he was younger, but he wouldn't confess himself like a Star Wars fan. He enjoys them, but he's not going to do backflips for it. But he actually sat in on a couple of the Mandalorian episodes from the last 3 or 4 of the first season, and he's been hooked the whole way. So he's watched all of season 2, and he's like, we need to go back to the first one. So like for something to hook someone in who's born when Star Wars came out and didn't care much for it, for him to be hooked in by something new, that it's got to have like some nostalgia that's woken a very young version of my dad up to what he forgot he enjoyed when he was a child, like that's massively.
Awesome. So he hasn't seen any of the new trilogy or anything, though?
Nope. He's watched the originals and he can remember, parts of them. Like if you did a Star Wars quiz to my dad, he'd be able to tell you what things were. But if you were like name plot points, he'd be like, Death Star blows up. He generally would be like so vague. But he obviously watched the originals. He'll have seen bits of things, obviously, as I've grown up, because
Should get him on
I've
Rogue
watched
One.
them all.
Get him on Rogue One.
Yeah,
I would, but yet again, he's just not fussed. But I feel like the Mandalorian could be a gateway. I could be like, hey, look, you enjoyed this.
Drug.
What? Yeah,
Put Rogue One on and say
weed.
this is a feature length of Mandalorian. Show him Rogue One.
Yeah.
I'll just tell him it's part of Mandalorian. I'm like, the next episode just came out. It's 2 hours long.
Okay, so obviously we've all loved The Mandalorian. I think last week's finale of season 2 was just utterly mega. So I think we should take a little bit of time just to discuss thoughts on what happened, because there were so many emotions in that episode for me. Luke arriving, oh my God. I was getting a little bit emotional. I was like, this could be Luke. This could be mad. And then it happened. I was like, it is Luke. And then he starts to take Grogu away. And I was like, oh my God, they're splitting up Mando and Grogu. I don't know how I feel about this. And then he touches his face. And I was like, oh my God. Luke takes a shot of all of them. I was like, oh my God, can't handle this. And then there's that final shot, which felt very Star Wars, where it's just all the cast of characters stood on the ship just looking. I was like, fucking hell. This feels like the end of the series. I'm not sure I could handle all of it.
I thought it was the end as well. Definitely.
Yeah.
I thought it was done.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck.
I feel like the only thing that redeems it as not being the ultimate end is obviously the Darksaber arc. I was like, well, that's not been concluded. But yeah, it's big cinematic end. Yeah.
Just
big weight. Yeah, there was a lump in my throat for sure. I was sort of like, oh, this is emotional.
Yeah.
And a lot of, especially the R2D2 segment, because it's like, oh, well, Grogu's not just going to go, is he? And then R2 comes in like, oh, yeah, this is
Come on, you little
cleverly
shits.
played.
Yeah,
it's good.
Did you think it was Luke when you saw the Jedi going through the tunnels and taking away the?
When I saw
I don't want to be like, I knew it straight away. But when I saw like a lone X-wing, I was like, oh, it's got to be Luke. I didn't believe it. But I was like, the only person with an X-wing, right? Like Luke Skywalker.
My instinct was Luke, but I thought, no, it's not going to be, is it? It's going to be...
Same. I was like, it's got to be Luke, right? And then it was like, nah. And then the moment, it was when you saw, because the rogue Jedi, I was like, meh, not give way. But then the moment he draws the lightsaber and you see the gloved hand, I was like, it's straight up Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I didn't even clock it.
Yeah. And then the big reveal when you actually saw his face. I was kind of expecting it to be Sebastian Stan. I was like, maybe they'll do it, because you've seen the picture, right, of side by side of Sebastian Stan and and Mark Hamill when he was Luke Skywalker, and they've just swapped the hair and they're a clone. It's like, this should have happened a long time ago. Yeah. But when they did the CGI face, I remember I've seen it twice. The first time I saw it, I was like, I'm not convinced. It didn't feel quite. I feel like the face was layered on, and there was like certain angles where it didn't look natural, but I don't know if that's just the shock of seeing it the first time, because when I watched it the second time around, I was totally sweet with it.
I thought it looked pretty good. But my first reaction was like, that looks all right. Good.
Yeah. No, I didn't think it looked bad. It was just like, I think because you're like Luke Skywalker's face, I was instantly like analysing it. I was like, like overthinking the detail, which I've done the same with every CGI character I've seen, so...
You're definitely right that there was like a shock value to it, that it sort of happened and it was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, it's him, but then it's like, oh, they've shown his face as well. Yeah. It was like the Tarkin thing in Rogue One, like you saw the reflection. I was like, I don't got to see his face, and then he turns around. It was the same again. I was like, oh, they've done it.
Yeah.
Like, no dicking about. Like,
I thought
it was good.
I don't even know if it's possible. I'm trying to think of the timelines, but if it hadn't been for the ship, which is what made me think it was Luke, if you hadn't seen the ship, my go-to would probably have been Obi-Wan Kenobi. Could that have been possible in the timeline? I'm not sure where we are.
No, he's a ghost.
Yeah,
he's a ghost, yeah. Yeah, of course he is, yeah.
I was kind of wondering if there'd be any, like, not a literal Jedi showing up. I mean, in that context, it makes sense because he rescues them. But I wondered if the contact that Grogu made in the episode 6, the tragedy. Yeah, I wondered if when he was on the rock contacting, he'd contact Qui-Gon or someone deceased,
Yeah.
or Obi-Wan, like you say, and have that interfere with the story somehow, because they can still like interact with things, can't they? Even though they're dead, like the Yoda Force Ghost it does in Last Jedi. Yeah. So I wondered if there'd be something like that, but no, they went full bore, straight up Luke Skywalker, which respect. And the shot at the end is really nice, where like there's like you said the bridge with all the characters on, but then there's that shot which is really Star Wars of the elevator. It's like Luke, R2D2, and the child with the like Death Star kind of wall panel behind him. I was like, yeah, that's huge Star Wars. And like how just the elevator door closes, that's credits. I was like, yeah, it's nice. It's good tie.
And
good tie off.
The symmetry between Rogue One, Vader, and Luke annihilating.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Like,
yeah, it did. So yet again, it's like it did for. Although you actually got a lot of action with Luke, to be fair, in the originals and things, he wasn't shit. But I feel like it's the same. It's done fans a massive service in like elevating the status of characters who people generally feel didn't get enough of a showing, and I think Luke didn't get enough of a showing with the sequel trilogy, the Disney one. So it was like following on from that, being like, look, we're going to give you the original Luke Skywalker, but the action you wanted. And they did it with Vader in Rogue One. They've done it with Luke now in Mandalorian, and Boba Fett in Mandalorian has had some big action. So
there's a lot more to explore with Luke Skywalker, isn't there? Again, if you were to get like a Sebastian Stan or something like that,
I think that's the key, isn't it? I would just be casting Sebastian Stan now.
There's a bunch of stuff to explore. I mean, obviously there's no mention because it was before the Mandalorian came out, like the Grogu stuff in any of the new trilogy, and who knows what Luke was doing in between this point now and the Force Awakens.
Yeah,
it's quite foreshadowing though, isn't it? Because in Force Awakens, he's defeated in the end. Kylo Ren's defeated all the Jedi and ruined what his training was. So if you're assuming he's taking Grogu to train him, does that mean Grogu dies because of Kylo Ren?
I took that because I thought about it like that, but then I thought maybe Grogu doesn't complete his training, maybe because they're going to link back with.
I wonder if. Here's a prediction, wild prediction. I'm just going to throw it out now because if it happens, we've recorded this. It's on tape. I wonder if, because he says he promises to see the child again, which inevitably means in these kind of films he probably will. I'm wondering if at the dawn of Kylo Ren, it's because I feel like there's a lot of ties in. They talk a lot about Order, which is very like the First Order. There's like a lot of nods to what's coming. I feel like it might lead eventually to a point where it's you're further ahead, and it is the scenario where Kylo Ren and the Knights destroy Luke's Jedi following. And I wonder if Mando will be the one to save Grogu from it and maybe die that way. So I think that because it'd be a noble death, right? If he saved Grogu from his fate,
or him and Grogu just run off into the sunset together.
Yeah, I'm open to either. I don't need a tragedy necessarily, but I feel like that feels like a smart way to lead it.
Talking about Mando and saying how one of the things with Mandalorian is that you'll see the seeds start to grow for what will be the First Order, and you sort of see in the background how the First Order sort of do take over. And that was one of the things that I loved about that episode of Mando, where it was heavy Imperials, and there's that guy who says like at some point people just grow tired of like free will and they want order. And you sort of go like, oh fuck, like they are sowing the seeds for what will become the First Order and how they rise to power and how people, accept it. And that whole planet is that same thing where it's like, they had the Imperials on that planet, and then they've now got the Republic, and they're sort of just fed up of like these people stepping into their lives and changing things. They just want to be themselves. So you can kind of see there's this murmur of it happening in the background. So I think you're right there that there could be, like in a sense, a time jump with Mando where you suddenly it's closer to First Order and things happen. But it's
because you don't know what the scale is when obviously Luke's older, but you don't know how big a deal the First Order are when Ben Solo becomes Kylo Ren. You're sort of, I don't know what that gap is because he's obviously young anyway. So I feel like depending on where they place that, that's what will make a
a difference.
That could make a big difference. But obviously,
think
Mando
with,
would be a lot older as well then. So
with Disney, though, you've got to remember there's a lot of money at stake here to keep something like Grogu as Grogu. Like they can't, if they do too much of a jump. Because I listened to, I think it was a podcast the other day before the season finale, and they just said, "Oh, do you think they'll jump forward in time and it'll be like teenage Grogu?"
No.
Obviously, he wouldn't be right. He wouldn't be any bigger, but
he's already 60 years old and he's still a baby. So and Yoda dies at 900 years old. So they've got a lot of wiggle room. They can keep him as a baby for as long as they need to, because, well, assuming Yoda dies at 900 and he's 60, he's got like another 60 years before he's going to be like, he's currently toddler, but doesn't speak.
Yeah.
So definitely still baby.
I do think that you're right in the sense that I think they're going to have to address how Grogu leaves Luke, because it's either that you get to that temple bit, it falls apart and Grogu is saved, or Grogu leaves beforehand. But I do, in my head, I kind of think like whenever they finish the series of Mando, I do think the last scene could possibly be Grogu's first word, that they sort of end it with like, that's the thing that we leave you on is he's, because they've sort of done it in the background where it's like, it's subtle that he's just this untrained Jedi, that he's got so much potential but he's not trained, and so by the time he speaks, that's kind of like a big moment that things change.
I saw a really cool,
this is the way, that's what I was saying.
Yeah. I saw a really cool theory about Grogu actually, and I don't know how accurate it is to timescales, but someone said because of the age Grogu is, technically it means he would have been born the same time as Anakin. Is that correct? So, or he'd have been on Tatooine, the same time they found Anakin, which means they could have not found the correct chosen one, and Grogu could be the chosen one.
Interesting.
I don't know how correct to year scale, it might be a bit out, but I saw something like that and I was like, that'd be a really cool twist in that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon just picked up the wrong guy because he was hidden on Tatooine as long as. So, I mean, actually, no, that actually does fall apart when scratch it. He was safe from the Jedi Temple, wasn't he?
Yeah,
so he wouldn't have been on Tatooine. So whoever came up with that theory, get out.
I think that finale really does set up a lot of things, and I think it's just smart. I definitely think there's going to be a bit of a rebranding for the show moving forward for a little bit.
I hope it's grounded, though.
I think it still will be. I think there's definitely going to be the Mandalore storyline. I think they've got to address that.
Good.
And because at the end of the day, the show is called The Mandalorian. As much as Grogu is an integral part of it, Grogu can also go into other shows. Like, Ahsoka's got her own show and all these stuff. When you talk about the future, there's a lot of places that you could see Grogu popping up. But
I still think he'll be part of Mando. Even if there's 8 episodes in a season?
Yeah.
Or 9?
He
might pop up in 2, or he'll be in the last 2 episodes or something. I think there'll be the Mandalorian out now with Darksaber, and then it's gonna towards the end when that's wrapping up, it's gonna be like shit's happening over here, and we'll see Grogu again, because that's gonna be the build, isn't it? I think it's gonna be the when is he gonna come? Like, we're all desperate to get to the end of the season. So
you can guarantee there's going to be that Monsters Inc. moment where at the end he rebuilds the door and sees Boo again. There's going to be that, but with Din and Grogu, isn't there? You're going to the foreshadowing of the emotional separation. It's and he's promised he'll see him again. Everyone's going to watch a scene, however far down the line, where they reunite and everyone's going to cry, because Disney do that very, very well. If Toy Story is anything to go by, I think they're covered with that one. It's going to be an emotional roller coaster at some point.
Cool. I think fair to say that all of us absolutely loved that finale, and I think just to wrap up the Mando section, I think let's just quick fire go for 3 things that we love about Mandalorian, because it's so many episodes. I think rather than just jumping around, this episode was great, whatever, I think let's go for 3 things that all of us love about Mandalorian. So Hughes, you're up first.
Are we doing in order or just any 3?
Any 3. You don't have to do
okay, first mention Boba Fett. Genius. The way it was put in, the fact it's Tamura Morrison, he's now the correct age to actually be Boba Fett, and everything they did with that, amazing. I lost it. Incredible. B, creature design. and animatronics and the use of all the practical effects, ridiculous. That was very much to my taste, and always a favorite. And I'm so glad they showed up in it. Tuscan Raiders, because God, they're cool, and they had a few little moments in the sign language and stuff. I loved how they were developed upon, and they didn't deviate from anything you already knew, but they were awesome. So I'm going to go Tuscan Raiders. Do they fall into creatures and practical effects? Kind of, but I'm not going to include them because they're more than that. Creatures and practical effects and Boba Fett, they just tease me. And that's not to belittle Grogu or the other things, but yeah, I could pick 100 things, but we'll go with those three for now.
Nice.
Barnes?
Well, I would have said Boba Fett as well. I really like Boba Fett as a character.
Can't pick it. Sorry, mate. Already done that one.
Okay. Well, I mean...
No, you can. You can have Boba
No, Harry, no. I can think of another one. I mean, I love the storyline between Din and Grogu. I think it's just spot on. Like me and my wife, we love watching it weekly, and just you can't help but fall like in love with those characters and the bond that they have, especially at the end in the last episode. It's just really powerful stuff. So I love that. I love how it looks visually. I think it's just so well done. Like, I looked through the art of book the other day, and it's just, when you get to the end credits and you see the artwork, it just is so cool. And I love just the whole direction of it with all different directors as well, and you can see a little bit of a hint of their style in each one. And I just think it's really well done. Each episode, each director, I think Jon Favreau's writing is perfect, because it, like we said, a big deal for us in the Star Wars things is the humor, and I think they just nailed it weekly, because you're not laughing out loud at any point, are you? But just the little touches like Grogu taking the ball off the gear stick, and the way Din is just, he's never ha funny, is he? But it's just like classic Din.
Yeah.
It's just good, like those few things. But I mean, Boba Fett was a big deal when he popped up. It was just like, fuck yes, in his ship. What's it called? The
slave one.
The slave one, yeah.
Mega.
Did
anyone else, by the way,
when he showed up, picture of him on my wall?
Beautiful.
That you drew, Harry.
I did.
Yeah, the Boba.
I don't recall it. Oh yeah, yes, you do. Nice throwback. But no, did anyone else, just cutting in on the Boba hype, did everyone else unanimously, the moment in the tragedy, when the ship comes into earshot, you hear the thrusters in the background, the little drone, the massive Boba Fett nerd I am, I literally went slave one. I said it out loud, and then it flew into shot, and I was just like, I was literally like worshipping the screen. I was like, this is brilliant.
I was just like that, yeah.
I'm alone. It's fine.
Yeah. I bet your dad was as well, slave one.
Just me and Dave, just sat next to you, like eyes connected. Like, I know that engine. So like, my dad loves classic cars. So I love fantasy vehicles.
Yeah. You were like slave one. He was like Porsche.
Yeah. Is that a 2-liter V16? I hear. No.
What about you, Nick?
So, Boba Fett again. I've got to say.
Oh, you can't have that one.
I know.
You can't have Boba Fett.
You and Harry both can't copy me.
Okay, so I'm going to go for the filming technique, the volume thing. When I watched Disney Gallery, that blew me away. The fact that they created this soundstage that is like a 360-degree screen, and it emulates anywhere.
That's so good. It's so smart, isn't it?
Yeah, that blew me away, and I think it really changes filmmaking, because you can now just place people anywhere without having to go on location, and it looks like that you just can't tell. So I'll go for the volume. I'm going to go for you've taken the storyline already, and you've taken the emotional core, so I can't do those. I'm going to go for Ahsoka, because I absolutely love her. She was awesome. I thought that episode was amazing. Really loved it. She was just cool, badass. I like that they didn't shy away. They weren't like, we're going to slowly reveal her. It was like opening episode, bang, there she is.
Yeah.
She was just very cool. And then I'm going to go for all the supporting characters. I think the supporting characters are great. Like, everybody's really cool. They've all really rounded them out. Everybody's got an interesting backstory. Everybody's got a tale to tell. And yeah, I think they've populated the world with the right kind of characters, and the people Star Wars has always been this sense of, there's people in the background that you go like, that's cool. I wonder what his story like. That, that was very much Boba Fett to an extent. He didn't have a lot of time in the original trilogy, and people were like, I wonder what his story is, and they've given him the background. But Do you see what I did there?
And the teaser at the end as well.
Subtly, I managed to say that Boba Fett is my third thing by saying supporting characters.
Nice.
Smart.
I mean, he is. That's genius. I feel like your answers to the questions were way more like thought out than mine. Mine was like, I love it. Just ham it any 3 items that I can think of.
I think those things are what stand out for me, and I think it continues to do that with every episode. I think it's always those 3 things really stand out. So yeah. Okay then. So absolutely loving The Mandalorian, and then last week before, when Disney announced all their Marvel shows and all their Pixar stuff, they also then announced like 10 Star Wars TV series, 10 things and films, things that are in the works. And
wasn't it just one film? Wasn't it just the Rogue Squadron film?
2, wasn't it? Taika's film and Rogue Squadron.
What's Taika's one?
Taika's got a Star Wars film. I don't think they said what it was, but they said he's directing one and writing it. And they revealed the logo, which is like a very kind of like almost Monty Python-esque logo. But yeah, so they announced a whole bunch of shows and everything, and there's just so much to unpack there. I mean, Ahsoka's got her own TV series. Genius.
That's gonna lead into Thrawn, isn't it?
You've got to assume Thrawn's going to be there.
Daddario's casting as well is faultless. It's like, I reckon, one of the best castings for, because to go from an animated character and pick someone that people aren't going to complain about, that looks not animated but is like true to an animation, is hard. I wouldn't have known who I'd have picked. But,
well, I love that with Rosario. She was
Did I say Daddario?
I mean, you sort of tied her name.
You did, yeah, but I'm not going to do what you did with Henry. And pick you up.
It's Rosario Dawson, isn't
it?
Yeah. I said Daddario.
We just went with it.
I love with that it was fan casting. That fans cast her in the role, and then that's how she heard about it, and that's how she got cast. I love that. So we got Ahsoka.
There's a lot of that with it.
We got Rangers of the New Republic, which curious about. No idea what they do with that.
I mean,
is that TV series?
Yeah.
I think that's going to tie into the Thrawn thing, right?
I don't know. I wondered whether it was going to Cara Dune's storyline, because she's part of the
New Republic officer. Yeah,
but that's,
and she's what's her rank?
I don't know.
Yeah,
she's a officer,
like a marshal or something, isn't she?
Marshal.
But because I think I did read that she was going to get her own series. But then the thing about that is that if she gets her own series, and obviously Shuka's got her own series, and then you start to lose too much of the Mandalorian cast, don't you? Like, Grogu can't not be in the Mandalorian season 3, and then other people bugger off for their own series, because it's just.
I guess it just depends how they do it.
I think it's an opportunity to bring in new characters, though, and that's something they've done anyway with Mandalorian. None of these characters existed before it, so I think sometimes you can overuse the same cast. So I think if you let them go off and do their own thing,
I don't want.
Yeah, but they can bring in new characters, right? So what's to say Mandalorian season 3? It's going to be, you'll have Din and Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians, and it'll still have what's his name, Moff Gideon, and if they're doing the Mandalorian, going to Mandalore to reclaim it, kind of, there's a lot more characters they can bring into episodes there, and I think if you're dragging along the same cast, it's almost like you're trying to make them fit into the plot rather than doing what's natural.
She's not in it. Is her name? Sorry, Carla, isn't it? Her first name. Carla. Yeah, she's not in it every episode. Is she? She's just in a bit. But do you think that character could carry her own series? Because
I don't know about character.
I don't see it.
I wonder whether she's just a part of it in the sense.
Part of it, yeah. I would get.
I feel like Rangers of the New
leading
Republic is going to be a group of people. I think they'll introduce new characters who'll be leads, but I think she'll be in it. And I wonder whether her character is like going between Mando and going between New Republic. It's like you see her pop up at different points in the storyline.
Well, Pedro Pascal said he wants to show up in other series, didn't he? He said that's what he wants to do.
I think that's the other thing that I was going to say is, they've announced 3 spin-off shows of The Mandalorian, and I wonder whether moving forward these shows are all interconnected. That it's like
he doesn't even have to be on set, does he? He wasn't on set for half season 1 of Mandalorian, was he?
Yeah,
just did the voice.
Comes in voice it. So we've got Rangers of the New Republic, Mandalorian, and then they announced the other one just after Mandalorian finished with the Book of Boba Fett. Just genius.
That was such a good ending. That was such a good image at the end.
Yeah, it was strong, wasn't it? I think Boba Fett fans sort of watched The Mandalorian anyway and were like, this is great. And that would have been enough. But then when they drop that at the end, you're sort of like, it's another thing of like, I'm not really sure where this is going, but I love it. Like, is he taking over crime on Tatooine, or
Looks like it.
sure? Like,
Yeah.
he's now the Godfather. I saw a lot of memes related to that where they put it was the shot of him sat on the throne, and then at the bottom it was just the Return of the King from Lord of the Rings, and I was like, it's actually very apt.
Yeah.
People have waited a long time for it, so why not?
I think that's cool as well, and I like the fact that they've sort of said that's like the next chapter in what the Mandalorian saga is. That it's you've got this story about Boba Fett, which is linked to what is going to be Mandalorian season 3.
Because they haven't confirmed, because originally they said Mandalorian season 3 would be out Christmas, but then they said the Book of Boba will be out Christmas. So now we don't know if they're going to be side by side. Like I read somewhere it's going to be bi-weekly episodes.
Oh, interesting.
A bit like how Angel and Buffy used to be. I don't know if it used to be on the same evening, and then they would be at the same time, and eventually sometimes they do like a crossover where Angel would show up in Sunnydale, but then when it was his episode, he'd just come back from Sunnydale.
Yeah,
right. That could work.
But also they could just have a break from Mandalorian, couldn't they? But I did read that they're going to shoot both this year, though.
Yeah. So
yeah, I feel like I wonder as well how much of that will be almost like a prequel to The Mandalorian, because I feel like I don't know what plot it will carry. I trust that they can write something awesome, judging what they've done with Mandalorian, but I don't know whether it's going to be purely linear from him sitting on Jabba's throne, essentially, or it's actually all points if I can remember his name, Bib Fortuna, Bib Fortuna's throne, right after killing him. Whether it's going to be what he does from there, which I feel like naturally that's got to do it, but I feel, or is it going to be a bit of build up to before he gets his armor back, so how he got out of the Sarlacc pit? I feel like that's a question people want to know the answer to. Yeah. Because although, and I'm wondering, yet again, the analyst in me, there's a line earlier in the series about the crate dragon hiding in an old Sarlacc pit, and it's like that's impossible. And he goes, not unless it ate the Sarlacc, and that's conveniently where. And the guy who says that's the guy who's wearing Boba Fett's armor that he got off the Jawas. And it's like, I wonder if they'll tie that in and say the reason Boba got out was not because of his skill, it's because the crate dragon ate the Sarlacc that he was in, and he managed to lucky dodge that way or something. But I'd love that question to be answered.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a case of that. I get the impression that it's going to be a bit of like an anthology series, kind of jumping around
back and forth,
showing like as the Book of Boba Fett, it is a sense of like here's all these different chapters of where Boba Fett's been. Now
it'd be cool if it went really far back as well, so it just did like an overview of all sorts. Like if it like nods to like holiday special stuff and things like that. I'd love it. I think they can do whatever they like, really, so long as they do it in the same tone they did with Mandalorian. I don't think they can go wrong. But excited for it. Do we know how many parts that is?
No, they haven't said.
Nothing.
I think it's a limited series though, so I think it is literally like a one-off.
It's going to be one, like Obi-Wan Kenobi,
So then you've got Obi-Wan Kenobi, Hayden Christensen's back for it. Curious about this one, because they announced that you're going to get a face-off between Obi-Wan and Vader again. And that sort of fucks with A New Hope a little bit. Not sure.
Yeah.
They must have a plan for it, though, because I thought that same. So how are they even going to pull that off? But there must be some
plan for it.
I just don't know what it is.
You reckon it'll be like not a physical duel, but like a through the Force type thing? So you'll see them fight, but it's not happening. It's more like a
thing.
It's a duel of wills, something like that. Maybe that could be cool. But no, I feel like if they have an actual fight, that's a bit like okay. I don't know how you explain that in the storyline, because they're meeting on the Death Star in New Hope is pretty definitively like the first time they've seen each other in a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but
difficult
up for it. I trust them.
I'm game for it,
which is nice.
It's Deborah Chow who did a few of the episodes or maybe just one. I can't remember, of Mandalorian, and she hit out of the park with that. So I think there's a lot of faith in her kind of making that. So you got Obi-Wan, you got Ahsoka, you got Rangers of the New Republic, you got Book of Boba Fett. They announced The Acolyte, which is like set during the High Republic, which is Disney's new big Star Wars initiative, which is like set way, way, way before Phantom Menace, and it's like the height of the Jedi. It's the core
That'd
of
be fun.
And I think that's going to be really interesting. I think that's cool. I'm curious as to how that works. I don't think any of the High Republic stuff's out yet.
No, I think so.
I think it's January when all that kicks off, so I think we'll find out a little bit more about that world, kind of go from there. They also announced the Lando show, and so my thought on
that sounds like a
the
panel
Lando
show. The Lando show.
So my thought
this
for
week's
this
guest
is,
star.
right, they get both Billy D. Williams back, and they get
Danny Glover.
Danny
Glover. Yeah, Danny Glover.
Yeah. So they get both of them back, and you open an episode with Billy D. Williams telling a story about where he's been, and then it fades into the story of that, and you get Danny Glover doing the story. So it's like
Donald Glover.
Yeah.
Right.
So you literally get like both of them in it, and it becomes like a Tales of Lando kind of thing.
Smart.
I think that would just be awesome. You'd get both.
Solid viewing, isn't it?
It would just be
can't go wrong. Yeah.
And
droid story.
A droid story. Yeah. Curious about that.
I really want it to be a gonk droid. I just want the old power droid, because that would be like a Wall-E kind of thing. A lot of people, I think, said about this a long while ago, that like a Star Wars Wall-E type film would work. And I can see a power droid working, because it would have no speaking lines, and that would be a real director's test to make something with no expression or emotions have an endearing tale. Because everyone pities power droids, right? You watch them, they're always being tortured, or they're always like walking around in the desert on their own, and you're like, look at that poor little guy with his stubby feet and his fridge body. Someone give him a hand. So I think they could give power droids a leg up with that one. That'd be great.
I think there's a lot of things they can do with that, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they tell a story that's just droids. Well, hopefully just droids. That'd be really cool. So you get that. You got Patty Jenkins with Rogue Squadron, which sounds awesome. I like that there's a lot of heart behind it, that she's
really invested in it, isn't she?
Yeah. It's come from a sense that I want to tell a fighter pilot story, and that just so happens to be Star Wars. I think that's going to be awesome. You got Taika working on his film, which we know nothing about. Taika Waititi. It's probably going to be mental.
I trust it.
So I think there's a lot of exciting things coming for Star Wars, and I think it's going to be a case that at some point we're going to have another one of these podcasts where we're going to jump in and talk craziness about everything they're doing.
I think as soon as towards the first quarter of the year, there'll be a load more information in there. We'll just dive right in, and then we'll just do some podcasts when some of the episodes come out, I guess, as well.
For sure.
Really exciting.
Yeah. I feel like after this, it's like I feel like we've only still touched the surface of all of these things we discussed. So that we could talk for hours on all of these. It's like this is a synopsis of all of it. So yeah,
we can always jump back into it. We're gonna do a third volume focusing on the prequel trilogy as well coming up. But we'll always time for Star Wars.
Yeah,
brilliant.
So that's our podcast on the Disney Star Wars trilogy and some of the things that are coming in the future, and the Mandalorian and all the other bits that have come out over the last few years. And we're going to do a volume 3, like I just said, that's going to focus on the prequel trilogy of Star Wars, which is going to come in a few podcasts' time. We're going to have a 2-week break now, so we'll be back doing another podcast on the 13th of January, and it's going to be about the new Miles Morales game that came out on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 the last few weeks. So Nick and I are going to talk about how the game played, our thoughts on it, and what we hope for the future in the Spider-Man gaming universe. And we have other podcasts planned throughout the year as well. So we hope everyone has a very, very Merry Christmas. Big thank you to our dear friend Harry for joining us for another podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always a laugh.
And we will, if you do like our podcast, please spread the word. Please subscribe on whatever podcast service you use. Keep listening. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Have a good Christmas, guys. Merry Christmas.
Have a good Christmas, Nick. And a Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. Take care.
Good day, guys.
Take care, world. Bye-bye.
So long.
Bye.